Hello there, and welcome to Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, the Writers' Room podcast dedicated to fixing the Star Wars sequels. Each week, we take a closer look at one part of the galaxy, how sequels ruined it, and how we might fix it in our version. As for our progress update, we're building up to a 6-part writing bootcamp to take us through the rest of the year, so stay tuned for that series coming soon. For now, I'm Bryce Quinn, and I'm joined by the water skiing world champions Sandro, Karayan, and Carmelo Keating.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Awesome. Love it.
So you guys have spent your weekend water skiing up at a lake with some friends of ours?
Yeah, that's brilliant because I actually never water skied
Yeah.
the whole
Oh,
weekend.
you didn't actually at all?
I did other activities, but not skiing.
Same here.
And you're both very tired and very sore. Maybe one of us rocked up an hour late to the recording today.
Maybe. Maybe it was only closer to 40 minutes.
That's fine though. So this week's topic is Starkiller Base, and we've got some ideas for it that are going to take us on a trip down into Sith alchemy, cloning, exegol, and a bunch of other things that the fan base all love so much. So, context. Starkiller Base. What went wrong with it? It's the infamous Death Star replacement introduced and destroyed during The Force Awakens. Let's talk about that first. We'll open up the show, Starkiller Base.
Really interesting thing about Starkiller Base because the official poster for Force Awakens
Yep.
came out really late in the marketing.
Okay.
Because they were hiding certain things. And even though you saw snippets of some sort of explosion or something in the trailers,
Yeah.
Starkiller Base is fully just on the poster.
Interesting.
Something that they'd kind of kept under wraps mostly until that final poster.
And they released, the announcement came out with that poster.
Yeah, and everyone's like,
What the fuck is that?
is that a Death Star?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
right.
obviously, the movie comes out, and that's when we all are like, "Oh, it's episode
Huge
4."
Oh,
Death
it's just
Star.
remaking episode 4, yeah.
The name itself, Starkiller, we know that they recycled the name of Starkiller.
Luke Starkiller.
or
Isn't it?
Or I mean, yeah. So way back when, to the early drafts of the original Star Wars, it was Luke Starkiller, and then it went Skywalker because that's less aggressive. And then the Starkiller was a character in The Force Unleashed. What was his? Galen Marek.
Marek? Yeah, I think so.
I actually don't know his name, so I'll
Yeah.
trust you guys on that one.
But
Yeah.
Starkiller's that guy.
Well, there you go. Some fun facts about Starkiller Base.
Yeah.
But overall, I think we all hate it, right?
Yeah,
It's a big part of what makes it so similar to
A New Hope.
A New Hope.
I think one of the biggest.
We all sort of draw that connection to the final act and how the story sort of all revolves around them having a big Death Star.
Yeah.
And they even
Having to destroy that big Death Star.
they even do a big meeting where it's if here's the size of the original Death Star,
And
this
here's
is
the new one.
here's our Disney Death Star right here.
Yeah.
yeah. Plus, I mean, Death Star 2 was also criticized by fans and critics back in 1983 for just doing the Death
Rehashing
Star
the same
again.
thing.
And so why would you 30 years later
Do the same thing.
when it was
again.
already there could be other weapons. There could be other
There
super
could be
weapons.
something, but
Yeah.
we're going to dive into that. I got a little thing for that today.
Yeah.
I got a big thing. But
Fun little thing about Starkiller as well. So Starkiller canonically, I think, is Ilum, the planet Ilum.
yes.
That the Jedi used to get their kyber crystals from, that the Empire started mining, and then we see it in which of the Jedi games?
Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
You go to Ilum and you make a new lightsaber there.
Yeah, and there's a big rectangular pit dug out of
There's
it.
this huge chunk, and it's very much you see it in the game, and you're like, "Holy shit, that looks like Starkiller Base! What the hell?" It looks exactly the same. It's an ice-covered world, and
I think that the
full of kyber crystals.
Yeah, I think that's the understanding though. They're right. Is they're mining the kyber crystals for the Death Stars, and then just so happens that they're like, well, maybe we could actually make a big weapon out of this.
A giant super
Big
weapon.
planet Death Star.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting implication and an interesting idea, and we've definitely taken the seed of that idea and expanded it out. But I think in talking about what is wrong with it, it very much exemplifies so much of what we hate about the First Order.
Yeah.
How on earth did they build it? It's just this weapon of such titanic proportions that it makes no sense.
Where did they get the resources to even...
Did it start as a planet and it's been converted into a super weapon? Who did that and when? Because it cannot have been the First Order.
No,
They just didn't have the resources post-Empire.
Well, we get the idea, if it is Ilum in the game, then we get the idea that the Empire is already doing it
They've found it,
pre-fall.
Yeah.
but have they started converting it? Who said, yes, let's go on that one? Did Palpatine do that? If so, why?
It's really stupid that we have to operate off assumptions, but yeah, we can assume.
Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions to ask.
Yeah.
If this is the same planet, which I don't think is fully confirmed, is it? It's
don't
just
know.
they look the same and it makes a lot of sense.
It was a fan thing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think
that
it's
was
just it's one of those things that it's this seems to be the connection, even though no one's confirmed it in canon.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's no stories that explore that part of it.
Yeah, and were there forests on Ilum? Because I didn't think there were.
From what we saw in the
didn't-
game, it was just frozen wasteland, but it could have been
and
the
from
North
what we've
Pole.
seen, Clone
Clone
Wars
Wars.
is only frozen
Yeah,
wasteland.
and
Yeah.
there's forests on
And there's
Starkiller.
forests on
So it's
Starkiller.
it was never meant to be.
But
that
if they
way,
have
but
giant laser tech, maybe they've got terraforming tech as well. Who fucking knows?
plant planting tech.
They had
'Cause they
those
need
giant
trees.
cow like droids that were like planting crops and shit in the distance. I don't know if you remember those.
Yeah.
They look like AT-AT walkers without a head.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
weird like
I said it.
farming droids.
AT-AT walkers.
Obviously, that's very dumb. World building wise, I think that's very, very frustrating. Like, where did this giant galaxy changing super weapon come from? And who designed it? Who built it? And why does it exist? When they had Death Stars, what is the elevation from Death Star to this? If you actually think about the world building, obviously, you watch the movie and it's like, oh, fun. It's bigger. It's more terrifying. Of course, that makes sense. Power scaling stuff is good for adventure movies.
Yeah, but not for that villain.
But it's bad for world building.
Yeah.
And I think something we talk about a lot on this show is that Lucas managed to have power scaling with world building as well.
Yeah.
Like the Clone Wars, I think, is a very good example of that.
Let's talk about some other problems with Starkiller. So
Go for it.
both of the Death Stars. I mean, we didn't get to see the second Death Star do this, but we know the original Death Star could travel through hyperspace.
Yes.
I like that Starkiller doesn't need to.
No, it doesn't need to, but like
The original Death Star needed to like travel somewhere and then line up correctly. Starkiller just does it from home. It'll just send a big
Yeah.
old beam straight across the galaxy.
how does it have to wait for its own planet to rotate?
I actually have the answer to your question.
John, what's the answer to my
And
question?
because I read through the Wikipedia article, and this is from like some of the books and stuff, it is maybe one of the worst things you're ever going to hear. So the reason that you can see the laser beam from across the galaxy on Takodana and stuff, which usually would be impossible, is because the energy beam is so intense, it ruptures the space-time continuum and makes it makes like huge rips in subspace. So you can see the blast through subspace because that's how intense it is. So that's how Starkiller Base works. Fun facts with the show.
It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
It is pretty
Within
dumb.
Star Wars
Very
itself.
stupid. Wait, so how does it? There's something in the way, like Mello was saying. How does it go through that?
I think the implication is it shoots the beam and it's so powerful it goes through like subspace or like hyperspace or whatever. And that's how it travels the distance to distant galaxies.
So you can shoot around corners with it.
Beats me.
Oh wow! They
Yeah.
can bend it. They bend it.
They
like
bend the
Beckham.
laser. Well, they shoot it through hyperspace and then it hits the target.
Something that is kind of cool. Shotgun blast.
Okay.
Because it 'cause
hitting,
it's
like, the whole
multiple-
system?
Like
Okay,
it, like it shoots
okay.
like 5 at once.
It looks great.
That's
Okay.
pretty wild.
That's one of the problems I want to talk about. I want to talk about a few problems.
Go for
okay, so how does it do that? At what point in this you just see it shoot out of one big cannon? Where does it split off? How does it
and
target?
how does
Does
it
it come
target?
out
Yeah,
as
yeah.
one big laser and then it like separates?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not like it's a shotgun which just sprays. This doesn't spray. It specifically hits every planet it was trying to hit.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
How's it
It's
do that?
pretty wild.
That's like, I don't know, it's just really cool. It's just like
It's just really cool.
So cool.
No, I agree. Obviously, it makes a lot more sense as just one concise laser. But just looks
visually
cool.
it looks cool.
Visually it looks
Here's my
really
biggest
cool.
problem with that, and why I'm going to champion not ever doing that is because once you have a weapon that can take out a whole system at once and not just one planet, because
Oh,
I
it's
think
OP as
one
hell.
planet is terrifying and meaningful. A whole system, no one's going to fight against that. You're never going to convince an army to fight against that because they're like, no, they can wipe out not just one planet but a whole system. It's just beyond the scale of we can
Yeah.
fight against that. I think.
I'll get to a story problem in a sec, but like even let's just go back to square one. How does the Starkiller Base function? It drains the power of a sun.
Yeah.
Now Star Wars has never been about physics, but it's never been that batshit fucking crazy either, has it? Here's a star. This is more of a visual thing. Okay, here's a star, big. If you're listening,
Very
obviously big.
Yeah.
Here's a planet, much smaller, much smaller than a star.
Where does the sun go?
Where does the sun go? Don't tell me it has some sort of like Ghostbusters, like vacuum to put the sun in.
Mellow,
Or
I hate
just-
to say this, but I'm going to have to tell you that that's what it does.
Oh, it's fucking stupid.
It sucks the energy, Mello.
It holds the energy.
It holds it
contains
inside.
Doesn't just suck an edge. You see it like drain the whole. How does it? What the hell kind of tractor beam? Where can I get one of those tractor beams?
Now, the star killing part of it to
Yeah.
drain it, it sort of makes sense. It's like, to charge the giant super laser, we have to have a super battery, which is a sun. We'll do it. I think we can just scrap that entirely because the implication is, where does the sun go? It's a good question.
Can they use solar power?
The question also is, if the thing can't move,
How does it get to a new sun?
how does it get to a new sun?
That's a great question.
So it must be
Sandro.
able to move. That's what we, like,
It must be able to move.
It must be
be
able
able to
to
travel like through hyperspace.
So anyway, it's dumb as rocks.
It is dumb as rocks, and I think we're gonna scrap it entirely. But that's our problems with Starkiller Base. So let's just quickly move on to what our problems are with Exegol, because it's
Oh.
for us those are tied together.
One cool scene. I can't remember exactly what happened, so maybe it's not as actually cool as it is in my head.
Okay, what's in your head, Sandro?
Them entering Starkiller Base. Does he have to like hyperspeed? Does he hyperspace jump? Han
Fucking-
Solo
yeah.
does
You think that's
something.
Dude,
cool?
we
What
attacked that in the
fuck?
science episode.
Han Solo does something,
He does.
Yeah,
He-
but I
yeah,
can't remember
he-
what he does.
He has to come out of hyperspace
Like,
in the atmosphere.
yeah.
Oh,
That's
Okay,
silly.
no, that is silly.
Yeah,
Never
because he
mind.
could have and would have and should have died.
It's the second time in Force Awakens that they fuck with hyperspace stuff like that.
Yeah, because they jump out of a
So
ship.
from the get-go, they're already bending the fucking rules. Where it's like they're in the spaceship at the start with the Rathtars, and they lightspeed out of there, rip the Rathtar in half.
Yes. And do you know why they can do that?
What is that?
They justify it for themselves? Because Han Solo. It's the only reason they give.
Deifying these fucking characters again. It's
Yeah.
so
Han
silly.
Han Solo is great though, but he's not that great.
He's great, but the word deifying, to create a deity, to make someone more than just a living character, they're like, oh, they're immortal. Silly, stupid. So,
I mean, they killed him in the same movie, but
anyway. And then he comes back as a Force ghost. Stupid. Exegol,
Yeah.
the launching point of the Final Order, a fleet of ships all equipped with Death Star tech, and apparently an entire set of First Order officers and crew ready to fly
and
them.
and 1,000 Star Destroyers under the ice.
Under the ice,
for some
breaking out of the ice.
Yeah.
why
okay.
did you build them under the floor?
Just for the visual
Why?
of... Yeah.
Dude, it's going to look so
Yeah.
cool.
Everything apart from it being the ancient homeworld of the Sith is stupid.
Yeah.
That's the only cool thing.
Yeah, no, the ancient homeworld of the Sith kind of that exploring that part of it is like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some cool secrets there. But having this massive fleet of ships, all built with a Death Star laser,
Yes.
Already fully crewed.
All with the crew who are the children of like
Sith
Sith loyalists
cultists,
who
and shit.
live there and sit in a stadium all day waiting for Palpatine to do something cool.
So yeah, that's a whole bunch of what the fuck.
Yeah.
Like really.
And then a cloning facility.
But they aren't
run
all
by
crewed
run by
by-
what? Run by who?
They can't all be crewed by the creepy Sith loyalists because
It's their
then
children.
the people inside are like fully like decked out in like nice, clean
They
Imperial
look
armor.
like First Order troopers.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? How did they get there?
How did they get like all the armor and shit? Like
Guys, obviously there's like a Walmart
oh,
on
okay,
Exegol
that makes
that
sense.
exclusively
There's a gift
sells
store.
uniforms
shop.
for
Cult Mart.
Cult Mart.
Not much.
Get down to Cult Mart. We got a discount on crosses. You can burn them. Yeah.
Holy shit.
And the spooky Dementor things.
So
just, like,
that's
walk in.
Exegol, and obviously most people don't like Exegol. Outside of it being kind of spooky and cool looking.
Yeah.
You know, the visuals, again, they're always good. They always
Yeah.
looks cool. And like, you know, Ben Solo jumps onto, he's having like a little Indiana Jones side quest.
There's an elevator that's operated by chains.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That's sick. How cool is that? Anyways.
I'm not gonna feed into any of that stuff.
So
Let's sit
Exegol,
here.
kind of silly. And here we get our first kind of introduction to Palpatine's dark magics as he's building his own fucking creepy black teeth Force clone. And he's stuck in a cool robot chair, and he looks like the Emperor from
Looks like
Warhammer.
GLaDOS.
He looks like GLaDOS, but a
Portal
zombie.
2. That's a zombie attached
I was
to
thinking the
head.
Emperor from Warhammer 40k. With,
Oh,
like the tubes
I'm
in him and shit.
vaguely
Mm.
familiar with
Yeah.
that image. Yeah.
I'm only familiar with the Emperor through Dungeons and Daddies, the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, let's look
Okay,
into
look,
that.
I know that that's just like a fucked up Sheev clone. That
Yeah.
guy. Why does it look like that though? If
Why
it's a
does it look
clone,
like
why
that?
is it the same age as him?
Because it would be like Sheev. It would be
Yeah.
like Sheev from.
Yeah,
fucking-
and then also on there, obviously we see all of the Snoke clones. What the fuck is the Snoke clone? What is it modeled off? Why is it 7 feet tall? Why
and
does
the
it
really
look like
weirdly
that?
shaped
Why is
head.
it? Why is it also all like looks like it's
You
had a
can make a
lightsaber
good
fight?
Sheev clone, like a good proper looking.
It would
Sheev
just be a
clone.
young Sheev, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I think that Sheev that we're looking at specifically
Yeah.
is the one fucked up by lightning in Revenge of the Sith. He's got the lightning scars and shit. Like
no,
he
no,
looks
no.
like
But
that.
like, I think this is the thing. The film doesn't actually explain it. That Sheev that we see isn't the Sheev that he's not from the Death Star. He's
a new clone.
yes.
Yes.
Whose soul is embodied.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a what's the Harry Potter one? What do you call them?
A Horcrux.
It's a Horcrux.
Oh!
It's like a Horcrux
You've-
body.
Your read is that he's a Horcrux.
No, I thought that's what it was.
Ah.
I thought that's what the canon was.
I've never read into that way.
I'm so embarrassed because I was
It's just another body of
brushed up
Palpatine.
in the canon when we started this show, and
You
now
were?
I'm completely. You've got me questioning everything.
Oh,
I'm
He's not from the Death Star though.
No,
He's
he's
not from the
definitely
Death
not.
Star.
I'm not arguing that he's
Yeah,
from the Death
yeah.
Star.
And he can't be from Revenge of the Sith.
No. I'm saying he looks like he is.
Oh, he definitely-
He has the same lightning scarring, even though that makes no sense.
No, I get what you, yeah, right,
Mm,
yeah.
right.
Because that's
Yeah,
why
no,
his
I getcha.
face is like
I'm just critiquing it being stupid. If
Because-
he is a brand new
Yeah.
body, then why does he
Yeah.
look old, shoveled?
he doesn't genetically have like the crazy lightning
Yeah.
scarring. That's
Yeah.
something that's caused by.
That's caused by bad writing.
quick,
it's by writing
quick
it.
moment to think about that actually, just for a second. That's one of the weirdest like retcon things that Revenge of the Sith did.
Okay.
Why Sidious's face looks the way it does is because of lightning. That's what Lucas wrote in there. Not because it's a weird prosthetic and he's some old weird wizard, just because of lightning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
It's just funny that he went to that extra length. We could have just gone along with the whole he's evil and corrupted and
No, but I think,
old.
if he wants to be writing this character who is like this mastermind taking over politics, he can't look like a testicle. So he has to look like a man and then become a testicle later.
But then it's like, we know that Palpatine does that to himself. Why would he want to look like a testicle?
Nah, I think a part of that is trying to convince Anakin to like, I'm gonna die, you're gonna
so
kill me,
weak,
I'm so weak,
Jedi,
Yeah, he's trying to like make himself look weak.
It doesn't happen to Luke though. When Luke gets blasted. And...
All right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hand wave that one. Don't you touch the original trilogy, Mello.
Oh, heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid.
Luke should look like a testicle.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing in our new sequel.
Testa
trilogy.
Luke.
Testa Luke. It happened directly after the end of Return of the Jedi.
It takes like a day to kick in.
Yeah, he wakes up the next morning. He's like, "What? My face
Well,
feels
he
so
got-
hot."
He got hit by like a lot less.
Yeah.
Is my only excuse.
Anyways, what the fuck are we talking about?
Star Wars.
Sith lightning.
Yeah.
Sith lightning.
Yeah.
And Palpatine's clone looking all weird and fucked up, and he
yeah.
shouldn't. He should just look like Sheev from the prequel trilogy. Anyways,
Yep.
we don't like Exegol. Shall we
No.
move on?
Yeah. Cool.
Palpatine is the next thing
Just- okay.
to rip the pieces very quickly.
Quick. Actually, can I do a quick thing? Can we go back to the original Palpatine episode?
Okay.
Where we had very strong opinions on motivations of Palpatine, stuff like that.
Yep.
Immediately after the episode, I realized I was wrong because I was going so hard in on this whole like Palpatine's plan in Return of the Jedi was to, it was either have Luke become his new apprentice and kill Vader, or they kill Luke and stuff like that. And I completely left out the fact that like I thought at one point that it was that Luke actually strike him down and take his place, but then Vader was there to spring into action to defend him because Luke does actually swing at Palpatine,
Right.
and that's when Vader blocks him. I'd completely forgotten about that,
Okay.
and my whole argument in that episode was wrong.
Yeah.
It completely flawed because Palpatine never once actually thought he was gonna die.
Okay.
Yeah, good segue. It's Palpatine. Let's do it.
Palpatine. So Palpatine returns.
Yes.
Somehow Palpatine returned at the start of Rise of Skywalker. And that leads us on this path throughout the Rise of Skywalker film to explore cloning, dark alchemy, secrets only the Sith knew.
Cheers, Dominic Monaghan.
Thanks, Dominic Monaghan. I do love you,
Yeah.
Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah, in Lord of the Rings.
Obviously, this is stupid.
It's ridiculous.
The idea that Palpatine came back out of nowhere, the idea that Snoke is also a clone, Force clones are just a thing now, and this has been a thing for the entire time. The Filoni-verse, the Mando-verse, is currently spending a pretty significant amount of time trying to fill in some of those gaps so it's a bit more believable when we get to the sequels after his writing and after his world kind of runs its course.
Yeah.
We hate this and we think it is indisputably awful.
Yes.
Bad writing,
Yeah,
and it needs to be
It's-
cut out.
It's not good enough. You shouldn't have to have extra media to explain what's going on in your movie.
No, and I think that's an arguable weakness of the prequels. The Clone Wars
Yeah.
make it significantly better, and I think that's a weakness of the prequels. Do I think the prequels have more strength than the sequels? Yes, I think they fucking
No,
do.
They definitely.
And that's why we're here, to rewrite them entirely, because the foundations on which they were built are shaky, made of mud.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not rock
Yeah.
hard
And that's how a landslide happens.
stones,
Yeah.
real good, cool lore stones.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little rant. I don't know if we've got any other notes about
It's-
Palpatine returning other than that, though.
Well,
So
Palpatine
you go.
cloning. It's implied that some Palpatines were cloned and didn't have Force powers by like evidence of Rey. Rey's dad is a Palpatine clone that also, just looks fine. Doesn't have the lightning scarring or anything. Just looks like a young Sheev.
Yeah.
And then just goes and has a kid.
Mhm.
They call Rey like Palpatine's granddaughter, but really she's kind of like Palpatine's daughter, half removed because it was a clone and a different clone.
Yeah.
What's that family tree look like? It's hella complicated.
Weird.
Family tree.
Yeah.
Star Wars, man.
Yeah.
Family drama.
But yes, they go and bring back that stupid thing that was in Legends that clones can have Force abilities, which
Clones,
It just
cloning with the Force into people just doesn't work.
it's an unnatural thing. Cloning in general.
Oh yeah, we should have an episode on that, because I think the debate of, what is the Force and is a clone a living thing?
Yeah.
Because I think, looking at the characters from the Clone Wars, we would argue a lot of them are people
Definitely
with souls
living
and,
things,
and
but it's not
inspiration
for
and
it's
stuff.
not for science to decide
Right.
what does and doesn't have the Force.
And I also think that like you could have a clone have the Force, but you can't clone the Force into a clone. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You
No,
can't clone the clone and the clone in clone.
What the?
clone,
Yeah,
clone,
have,
clone,
have a run at that
clone.
again. I
So
didn't know what
you
the fuck you
can
meant.
you can breed a clone
Okay.
that can be born with the Force, but you can't breed the Force into a clone.
Yep.
You can't
I get
force
you.
it to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Force it to happen.
Right.
Like manually put the Force into
But-
a clone by like injecting them with like fucking Baby Yoda metachlorians.
I was gonna say
or something.
metachlorian, like blood transfusion, right? You
Yeah.
just
Don't.
steal the metachlorian
Silly.
blood and put that in someone else.
Okay, so we'll call that our maybe explore this a bit more.
Yeah.
Just the the metaphysics of what is a person in the Star Wars universe, what the Force can interact
we do
with.
the droids
In
episode again?
my idea that the Force is meant to connect with like all living beings.
Yeah.
Everything from like like rocks to people. So to like call a clone not a living being would be like an insult. Clones are very much like living beings. They're a part of the galaxy just as much as anything else is.
Yeah.
So I believe that a clone can be like one, not a million. Just one can be born with the Force.
With like enough midichlorians to be Force sensitive, for example. Even though everything has midichlorians, everything can connect to the Force. All right, we have ended up diving into this discussion anyways.
I feel like it's a discussion.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if it's super related to what we're talking about today.
Palpatine cloning too much today, or are we avoiding that?
We're fixing it.
I was just touching on like all of the stuff with Palpatine, Exegol, and Starkiller Base. I think this is really interesting.
Yeah,
But
right.
I think maybe it's a conversation for another day. We should jump into our pitches.
Okay.
For what we're going to do, and I'm going to hit you guys with a bunch of stuff. So
Sure.
if you want to start, Mello, you got something?
Nah,
Okay.
I'll wait.
All right.
And then I'll counter pitch.
Start because it's incredibly short from me.
Go for it.
Like initially, I was also like super hard on the Palpatine army clone train. Whole bunch of forceless Palpatines pulling strings from the background. I thought it was like very true to his nature of like what would a Palpatine do if his like main whole goal is to conquer death and be like the one
Yeah.
kind of big bad. And it seems very fitting that he'd even just clone himself just out of like this cynicism of like, oh, well, it's not really me, but I'm still kind of beating death in a way. Like
Yeah.
it's still like my consciousness kind of thing. And then like we've run into like so many issues with like, well, what happens when there's like if they're trying to get like one Palpatine to be Force sensitive, wouldn't they all like turn on each other? And I think, and then like for the past few weeks, I've been thinking about like, oh, what if there was just one? Like there was just one
Palpatine clone.
one Palpatine clone.
It is interesting. It's a bit simpler.
It's a bit simpler, but it's a bit untidy as well. I did like where you guys were going a few weeks ago, where it's like it's more of like a legacy thing. My only issue so far playing with those ideas is Phasma just doesn't seem like a compelling, overarching villain for a trilogy.
I agree.
Anyway,
I do have a Starkiller thing,
Okay.
actually, before we do get into it.
Yeah, what's it?
I don't want to see a super weapon used in this entire trilogy. That is like the same as the Death Star tech,
All right.
because it's something we've already seen before.
You don't want to see it as super weapon used.
I don't want to
and
see
you
it
don't think
like
Phasma is a compelling enough villain for your entire trilogy.
as she's currently standing, yeah.
All
But
right. I will
pitch.
address both of these things potentially in my
I'm excited.
big long list of pitches.
Yeah,
You guys
I'm-
already know most of this, but I put it all in one place for one episode today.
Yeah.
So, starting off, Exegol should be the original Death Star, an ancient Sith design, the ultimate weapon of destruction. The myth of this machine, a space station powered by kyber crystals that destroys planets, is the inspiration for the Death Star, an idea Palpatine gave to Dooku, who in turn worked with the Geonosians to build the original designs as seen in Attack of the Clones.
We've spoken about this.
We've spoken about this before.
off screen
We've
a lot.
debated it a bunch.
I really like the idea. I think like the idea of the Death Star itself being a ancient Sith legend
Yeah.
that Palpatine is trying to like grasp onto and trying to like convert into his own like bump the mic. Oh my god. Trying to convert into like a more like technologically standard way is something we see him do a lot throughout the trilogy of like he's always trying to make technological advancements, whether it be like with cloning or whether it be within like how he militarizes the Republic
Yeah.
into the Empire. It's very fitting that he would grab something of legend and try just build it himself.
Make a robot version.
But I think it's cool that like maybe in the background, final days of the Empire, that he's like still trying to search for the actual legend itself.
That's my other question. Bryce, congratulations. We've mulled it over. This pitch has been in the works for a while. The logic is sound.
It
The logic
feels
is-
sound,
the logic
right?
is-
We've done
sound.
some research on this
Yeah.
one. We went and rewatched those scenes from Attack of the Clones where they have the plans and stuff. I do have a lot
Yeah,
more though.
no. My quick thing is, it's also does he find Exegol at some point?
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
And my question, even though like I know we've talked about this and I know there's a segue to this, but does Exegol serve a higher purpose rather than just being a laser that destroys planets?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it an anagram? What does Exegol translate
enough.
to?
Enough. I've got more. Okay. Exegol exists in the unknown regions, the dangerous area. Fuck.
The dangerous what?
The dangerous area of space that Palpatine begins exploring more when he is in power during the reign of the Empire. He sends expeditions out there to find it while also building the Death Star and the Death Star 2. So this is all happening during his reign of the Empire.
Unbeknownst to Vader.
Unbeknownst to Vader, I think
it has to be.
I think is the
unbeknownst to
coolest
Vader.
thing. Yeah, is that Vader doesn't know.
Vader can't know, because if Vader knows about evil things on his
But if
deathbed
Vader
and doesn't
doesn't-
tell Luke, then he's a dick.
Yeah. What if Vader doesn't know about Exegol? How are we gonna get that big kaiju fight from the comics?
From the comics, we
How about
take
you
that
shut your
comic,
mouth?
we light it on fire.
No, yeah. Obviously, like we spoke in a previous episode on our canon episode, what is and what isn't canon. Vader comics, not canon, but we're drawing very heavily from some ideas from that canon, one of which being the big Sith
Planet.
Kyber
Oh,
crystal
Kyber Crystal, yeah.
inside of the heart of Exegol.
Yeah, which is a comic idea. So, the reason the ancient Sith designed this weapon is not simply to have ultimate power over the galaxy. The legend also states that the use of the Death Star to destroy a world can allow a Sith to return from death, granting immortality, which is fun. And it redefines why Palpatine created two of them.
That's the bit that loses me.
So that's
Bear
the
with
bit
me.
that loses you.
Oh,
I was
go.
going to go into,
Go for it, Sandro.
to my knowledge, how you pitched this a while back, which I thought was really cool, was it's that mass gravitas of like balance shift within the Force.
Yeah.
That huge like burst of dark side energy that allows Exegol to sort of bring life back into a Sith, or at least that's how the legend would kind of present it.
Yeah, it reads to me as like the ultimate embodiment of selfishness, destroying an entire planet's worth of life and existence and connection to the Force so that you as one person can return from the cosmic force.
Now, I feel like half of that is pretty structurally sound. We get that whole reaction from Obi-Wan when the planet
Exactly.
gets destroyed. He's like basically just taken aback, like, oh my god, like something has just like changed. This disturbance will be felt around the galaxy. It's very like similar to like Order 66 or the Jedi feeling
This
each other
huge
dying.
death. Yeah, especially to people they were connected to as well.
And we do get to see in Clone Wars, which is in our canon, during Order 66, Maul is like hit with a huge amount of like dark side energy.
Oh, is he?
And that's why he's able to take down that Venator.
oh,
That's why he's so like buff when he's taking down the Venator.
I didn't put that together ever.
Because there's that huge
Well, he
like,
senses it.
imbalance.
He knows it's happening. I think he's fucking terrified.
Oh,
Ah.
he's terrified, but like he's like you do get like a pretty throwaway line that I think implies why he's so strong at the time, where he's like, I can feel it. The dark side's more powerful than ever.
Huh? I didn't fucking.
And then he
catch
goes
that.
through
That's
a whole
sick.
Venator with just force powers alone, not even a lightsaber.
That's
So,
really
like-
cool. That's some like Avatar, like during an eclipse kind of shit.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that rules.
So like I feel like the logic is definitely sound there.
It'll take a bit more to kind of
my
to
only
figure out
thing
the details.
with if it's a legend.
Yeah.
Has it been tested before? Does it work? Do we know if it works? And if it's only a legend, can it perhaps be another legend misread where it's like, oh, it can give like a great amount of power to dark side users, but it won't actually bring
they
dark
haven't
side
proven
users.
the immortality thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then when the Death Star gets used on Alderaan, what does that do for
What kind of?
Sidious? What does that do
Yeah.
for Vader?
And I think that's a question that we can maybe ask and answer in some way. I don't have an answer to that right now, but I would love to find out an interesting answer for that because that could be really interesting. So, taking this a step further, the creation of Exegol led to the infighting of the Sith and the creation of the Rule of Two.
Oh,
Because I read through the Wikipedia article, there's no definite answer given as to why that happened. They try and introduce some bullshit about the dyad and the Force, but I ignored that because we're retconning that anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it just says, because they were so greedy and so selfish, they fight and they war with each other while warring with the Jedi, and the Jedi overcome and win and
Yeah.
destroy them. And then Darth Bane creates the Rule of Two. There's no real explanation given, as far as I could see just from reading Wikipedia.
Yeah, actually, I don't mind that. I don't mind too much like touching into like some.
If they
Old
create
Republic.
the ultimate weapon that gives you one person immortality, that would cause infighting because
Yeah.
they'd all want it. All
Bryce.
of them would want
Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah.
And they all fight against each other. And then Bane's like, well, we've got to make this a legend now because even if one of us achieves it, like, it doesn't
don't
matter
think
because
they-
we're the Sith get wiped out.
You don't think they'd line up and like lie on what I assume is like a little pedestal bed,
Yeah.
and then just like shoot a planet each at
You're
a time?
asking if I think the Sith would do that?
Yeah.
Incorporate like
in
that?
an
No,
orga-
I don't think
in
they
an
would.
organized fashion.
No.
You don't think they?
No, but you're right about the. Why am I also envisioning someone lying down on some sort of bed?
Yeah,
You know, like-
right. It's like a stone
It's
bed.
got to be a
that they-
stone bed
that they
And-
lie down on.
Yeah, and then-
it,
and
like
it's-
and it shoots like the dark
Yeah,
side energy.
but there's like
onto you.
light flows.
Yeah,
through
yeah.
cracks.
Yeah,
in
no,
the-
we're in the same place.
Why is this?
Yeah, right.
Have we seen
It's
this
actually
before?
so funny that
maybe
you
it's
mentioned
kind of
this.
like Darth Maul when he gets his powers, when he gets his middle legs from Mother Talzin.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it's kind of coming
It's
from.
so funny that you say this because I had the exact mental image for something later on revolving around this
Yeah,
kind
of
plot
course,
point.
of course.
It's,
They
the,
go and put
it's a
Ray
cool
on the
stone bed,
pedestal.
putting
Yeah,
Ray,
yeah,
putting Ray on the
Ray
stone
on
bed.
the
It's that. It's the fantasy thing, I think.
It's just
like,
it's where Link
Yeah.
wakes up in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
it's the same
it's
shit.
like it's got to have like liquid flowing upwards.
Yeah.
because it's like it's
Oh, it's spooky. It's weird
there's
reverse.
there's like
It's the Exorcist
tones
thing
and
of
like
things going upside down.
inscriptions on the side of the stone bed, and like the
They
liquid
light
like,
up.
flows through.
Yeah,
the
literally.
inscription. Yeah.
This is all. I feel like this is all just derives from the Exorcist. Shit turns upside down when bad things happen.
Can we find the original stone bed which we were drawing this idea from? Like, what is the original stone bed?
It's in Jerusalem.
We'll find it somewhere. But while
in-
I've got
in
you
the
two,
Bible.
before we get too derailed, I've got more. So that's Exegol. Those are my pitches for Exegol.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk it back a little bit to Palpatine. I am now of the opinion he should not be a clone or directly involved in the story at all.
Right.
The most we should ever hear is his cackle through a Force vision. It's more interesting that his influence is felt through his actions long after his death through Hux, Phasma, and Rey. Mello's right with me here. Additionally, Phasma intends to use Exegol to destroy a planet, likely Hosnian Prime, in order to resurrect Palpatine. This should ultimately fail, and Palpatine should not return in our story.
I've
High
come
five.
around
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah.
I do like this idea a bit more. My problem still stands as Phasma as like a compelling overarching villain.
We'll fix that.
That's easy.
But
We
yeah,
can make it
I'd love to get a bit of Palpatine action through Rey.
Yeah, so we're seeing his influence after 20 years of him not being around still is so powerful and like terrifying.
The
that
fear's still there.
it's influencing the whole galaxy.
I also do imagine that it's like, whilst not literally like a Horcrux thing, like I imagine it's sort of being like a Horcrux thing, where he's like converted dark side energy to make this child.
Yeah.
So like, there's just a tiny bit of there's a bit of Palpatine inside all of us.
No, I like it. It's cool. We still want that key theme of failure in episode 8. Is this like your episode 8 climax? Is the weapon doesn't get used, so the villain also fails? Like everyone fails?
I don't know.
Because I've been thinking about that.
It feels like a really good like ultimate climax in episode 9.
It does.
But it also could work in episode 8.
And then 9 is just about there's still a villain to defeat.
To
Yeah.
me,
Defeat
it's
the
a-
villain, you know?
It's a big, crazy fight of episode 9. Like it's like the end finale, big, awesome fight.
I've got some ideas, and I really want this. The more I think about it, the more I think it's like, oh, this feels like it's a story about Rey and Ben. And exploring their
Yeah.
character journey over the movies, I think makes more sense to put it in episode 9 because it's about their characters. And then in episode 9, it's about the galaxy.
Yeah.
And
then
how their characters will change
it
it,
would,
and save it.
would be very interesting as well, though, because you get that balance of like, you know, upon the revelation of like, this person was created by Palpatine through complete malice and then has all of the weight and the legacy of what it means to be a Skywalker on his shoulders.
There's definitely a lot
There's
of
pressure.
interesting stuff to play
There's
there.
pressure in both cases.
I'm nearly at the end of all these
Okay,
pitches.
yep.
So, the other part of the Sith legend of Exegol and the secret of immortality requires the creation of a life through the Force, a Force child like Anakin Skywalker. Just before the Battle of Endor, Palpatine created a Force child, fearing that he might lose, but the creation of a Force child is a mysterious ability. The Force child's location is unknown to the creator. Before Palpatine could use his vast resources to find the Force child and ensure his immortality, he was killed by his apprentice. 20 years later, his Force child is Rey, a loner on the edge of the galaxy. There's a lot there.
Sorry, so at the start, so say again, it requires a child.
Yeah, in order to unlock immortality, you have to create a life through the Force.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, right.
Okay, slightly lost me there.
Okay.
Yeah, because of
Mainly just because like we don't even really know it's plausible, and I'm not sure like Old Republic Sith would have known it's like even a plausible thing to make life through the Force.
But we get that legend from like Plagueis.
yeah, but I like that Plagueis knows how to do that.
You don't think Palpatine does?
No, and Palpatine does.
Okay.
He passed on everything that he knew, as he said. But maybe that it's not something that's always existed.
Oh, it's like Plagueis kind of invented that almost.
Kind
or
of. Just
it
real deep dive.
it
into
wasn't
his
like
own-
an old thing that he learned from like masters long
Yeah,
gone.
because the problem with old things being forgotten, the same as Force healing.
Yeah.
That's too valuable to forget. Things don't just get forgotten like that. And it's also then like, you know, power increasing over time. And powers evolving over time is more interesting than the past being way more powerful than
Interesting.
the present. I don't know. I kind of like the idea that he just tried to create the Force child in a last-ditch sort of thing, unrelated
Okay.
to Exegol. Just
My
in
thing
terms of his
is,
own
We've talked,
survivorship.
thrown out as a joke, like this idea of like the Horcrux. That's kind of where
Yeah.
my mind is, where
Yeah.
it's like Rey is that Horcrux because he has created her.
Yeah,
kind of
I just
thing.
don't see the link between her and the use of Exegol
Yeah.
is the one thing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
fair.
it seems like a stretch. I feel like it's the dark side energy that's really getting pitched as the thing that's bringing the person back to life. I don't see how the Force child then plays the part.
Okay.
And if
Or
you've got...
and it also implies that every Sith needs to have a Force child
Yeah.
in order to then
Use the
use
Yeah,
the
gotcha.
Plus,
awesome
if you've
crazy
just
weapon.
got like Rey is one attempt at eternal life. Exegol is one attempt at Eternal Life. There's all of these different.
It's like he's throwing out different fucking.
He wanted everything. He wanted,
Gotcha.
in so many different ways. He tried to survive and ultimately failed.
Interesting. Okay, I'm just going to finish these points off, and then we'll discuss all of it as one package.
Okay.
So this is why Phasma is kidnapping kids. She started kidnapping them 10 years ago when she started the First Order, and has continued the practice in order to build her army. So she would have been looking for a child.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
However, they know the Force child would now be around 20 years old and human. So that's kind of who they're looking for. They're still kidnapping kids, just honestly out of habit.
Can we still shoehorn that into? Because my pitch was in rethinking the First Order was that it was a humanitarian orphanage group, essentially, where like after the Galactic Civil War, there's so many, just orphans, and so it was initially a good thing that was then corrupted. Because then if she sees that and is like big group of kids, big group of way to steal kids.
And then corrupts it. Yeah.
And it's a nitty gritty thing, but I liked that idea.
My last and craziest pitch yet. When Phasma eventually finds Rey, her plan is to enact the ritual of the Undying, which requires Rey to be strapped down and given a drug of some kind, while Phasma has Sith cultists chant at her.
Yeah.
Rey would receive a Force vision and hear Palpatine's laughter during it. The idea is that she is permanently connected to the barest remnants of Palpatine that exist in the cosmic Force, allowing him to possess her as soon as Exegol destroys a planet. That's the Force child link there.
Yeah.
So these Sith cultists, they kind of have to be those like same or like it's just passed on from. There's just that group of people who we know are like close to Palpatine, and we see them walking off the Death Star, like out of his chamber in Episode 6. And then there's one of those guys is quite prolific in a few episodes of Rebels when they find the world between worlds on Lothal.
Very cool.
He actually becomes a character. So it'd have to be like there can't be many of these.
No. I'm not imagining like I'm not imagining Rise of Skywalker for the love of God.
Just
I'm imagining like 10.
Little small cult ring.
You don't imagine like a football stadium worth
No.
of Sith cultists?
No, I do not.
Oh, weird.
They go.
Feels like that's the first place you'd go.
Yeah.
What team are they supporting? What's their Sith cultist sports team?
But those are all of my ideas for
Sith
this
secrets.
wild Sith secret stuff.
Okay.
And that's the link that's what I had in my head to connect the idea of the Force Child and Exegol. And that's why Rey is so important to the story, is because she is one of the two keys to returning Palpatine from death.
Yeah, I'm still just caught up on the importance of using Rey as a Force child.
She's like the vessel. Like when he returns,
yeah.
her spirit will be in her.
Yeah, I get it. It just seems like a stretch, especially from an item that we don't know if it's been used before. And like, did every other Sith before them need to have a Force child?
Well, in order to resurrect.
I just feel like it's such a incredibly difficult thing to achieve that it warrants that level of like almost prophetic circumstance to bring it all together.
I think it makes sense that you need a host body that is as close as possible to the original. So if it's something that is being fully, in this instance, it's something that has been created. Maybe in times of old, it could have been the child. That's
just like an actual kid, or even their apprentice or something.
But we know that Palpatine didn't do that because who in God's name
who would go there
would do that?
Yeah.
What I also like though is the potential idea that Phasma misinterprets who it is, and thinks it's Ben Solo. And once Ben Solo is this ultimate powerful being, he's the heir of Darth Vader.
He is the heir.
Why
of Darth
wouldn't
Vader.
you go for that person?
Gotcha.
You
No,
know?
that's interesting.
I was thinking alternately Phasma does like a sort of misread on the prophecy kind of thing.
Yeah,
And,
it's like a dark prophecy as opposed to the prophecy of the chosen one.
yeah, and thinks by putting Rey in, it's going to bring Palpatine back, but it's really just like shooting her with like dark side energy.
Yeah, gotcha.
And like it would like awaken maybe the dormant sort of Palpatine essence that's like inside her, but it comes off more as like a coma stasis Dagobah challenge that Rey has to overcome.
Oh my god!
Wait.
Rather than like a
She's got it's in a mental force realm. She
Oh
has
my
to fight
God.
off Palpatine.
He goes into a mind palace and has to fight Palpatine.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
You could get lost
I'm
in
just-
there.
I was like, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Very interesting. Lots to think about.
There's lots to think about.
lots
So
to
like
think about.
deep lore stuff, a lot of really wacky concepts and wacky ideas. But
Yeah.
that's kind of what I have in mind for Exegol and how it works and why it exists and what Phasma's plan is. Because if Rey is the Force child, it makes sense why Phasma's kidnapping children and looking for her.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the prophecy because we left off the other week on
Decanonizing the prophecy.
prophecy.
Yeah.
It could be interesting if we were to make it something that is actually open to interpretation, that it kind of was misread.
Okay.
And that there is potentially more to the prophecy. The dyad or Rey or Ben or some of it works, or this, Darth side resurrection works into it.
Yeah.
Some way.
No, I like that.
It's an interesting through line connection to the whole
Yeah.
saga.
That's fair. I'm more interested in keeping the prophecy as vague as it is in the prequels. Could it be misread and still like play part in what we have going on in the sequels? For sure. but I feel like it should still be as vague and like as close to script as we have in the prequels as possible.
I agree. Here's something that, just talking about prophecy stuff just generated. I'll throw it at you. A very classic thing in fantasy writing is the evil people have, access to some hidden part of the prophecy.
Yeah.
Some ancient hidden part of it that is the evil part.
Yeah.
And that they have access to.
Yeah, right.
And it's like the Jedi only knew part of the prophecy, but this is the truth.
Yeah.
And it's like Palpatine will return immortal.
So we talk about a dark side prophecy.
Yeah,
we
it's
never quote it because they never quote
You
it.
never quote it because they don't quote it in Attack of the Clones, and it's the smarter way to write it.
Yeah, but
But they
you can
talk
refer
about
to
it, and they infer that it's like there was more to the prophecy that maybe the Jedi missed or didn't understand
Yeah.
or didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
They couldn't read Sith like C-3PO can, so they missed that part, and that's what they're operating under the assumption that that's all truth and it's not a lie.
Now, Phasma.
Phasma.
We need to talk about Phasma because we need to talk about like Palpatine, Sentinel clones, not clones, droids and stuff like that.
So
So
here's another pitch for you guys that I don't know how you're gonna feel about.
Does this tie into my Phasma thing?
Ties into villains.
Yeah.
Yes. So, in terms of antagonistic force, what we've created with these pitches is an interesting lore setting, but removed one of our best villains. Palpatine is a fantastic villain. In order to supplement that, you need an antagonistic force that is interesting, compelling, and terrifying. I don't know if I have that yet, but I've got an idea. If Palpatine is connected to the crime underworld, who we're trying to bring more into this story because we find that to be an interesting part of the galaxy, I really like this idea of the Gendai, who is this ancient alien warlord, not warlord, but like crime lord, who has been manipulating the underworld for years. I like the idea that Palpatine made a deal with him, said, if I die, here's this thing I'm trying to do, you've got to make it happen for me, and in return, I will return you to your status quo, the thing that you want the most, which is your control over the underworld and your power. You want that returned to you? I'll make it happen if you return me from death. And the Gendai, being this ancient, immortal, really cool being, is like, sure, fuck it. I'll see if you can return from death. That's something I'm interested to see. I'm basically immortal. I don't need to do that. I have no interest in doing that. When my time comes, I'm gonna die. And that's fine by me. But you, tiny little creature, I'm gonna see if you can pull it off because I'm curious. Because that feels like the kind of thing some ancient alien would maybe think about. So he is the link. And when he finds Phasma, he connects her to the First Order. And she builds the First Order because she is raised in Hosnian Prime by Imperial parents, and she grows up hating the Jedi. And she leaves to join the extremists. And she finds the Gendai. And the Gendai's like, you're the one who's going to champion this in. You're going to lead the First Order. And gives her the resources she needs from Palpatine. And that's how it gets all the way through from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens.
there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on there.
There's some things.
I think
you
it's
had me for a
really
bit.
cool in Jedi Survivor. I just feel like it's pulling a bit too much from it, maybe.
How so?
Like making a deal with the Gendai to like bring you back to life.
Shit. He does do that. Fuck. He does that
I thought
exact
you
thing.
were completely aware of that.
No, I forgot. I'm aware of it. I just forgot that's
what
kind
happens.
of...
Big spoilers here. What happens?
The main villain is a character from the Old Republic or the High Republic. Oh, sorry, the main character.
Spoilers for Jedi Survivor.
The antagonist is a character from the High Republic,
Yeah.
and he is returned to life, sort of, by the Gendai, who is in that game as well. It's a spoiler for that game, and those are the antagonistic forces in that game. He's in a Bacta tank, though. He's not, like, dead. It's a little different, but I see what you mean. I completely missed the link there.
It's also like with the Gendai, like having the Gendai servant.
The Gendai I see is more of a deal with the devil, is what Palpatine made. There's two devils, and one makes a deal with the other
Palpatine
one.
is the devil.
Exactly.
So
I liked the Gendai when he was a crime overlord.
Yeah.
And I think that was perfect. I just don't see it
Being that powerful.
yeah.
Being that tied to.
that tied to.
Okay.
what I'm okay with is the whole, maybe they had some sort of agreement, because we've always spoken about like the crime world within the time of the Empire was allowed to operate so long as they didn't fuck with the Empire.
Exactly, yeah.
And if they at any point they did, dead, done.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
So if maybe the Gendai is, let's say, for instance, inherits Crimson Dawn.
Yeah.
Palpatine, Maul's thing, same sort of deal. But then once Palpatine's dead, it's like, I don't know about any of this like sort of resurrection stuff, but just simply the agreement that you keep to your side, I keep to my side, you keep out of my way. Once the Empire's done, go on a power surge.
Yeah, he doesn't
Gendai,
need
you know,
to.
No,
yeah.
doesn't need. No one's keeping him in check anymore. And then also Phasma, I always liked as being already from the, like Phasma needs to be like 50, like older, like kind of same generation as Luke and Leia, because she was around when the Empire was at its height.
Yeah.
Was able to potentially grow as a trusted advisor, and that she's like, we've spoken about the one thing that has slipped through.
Yeah.
That all of these Imperial warlords might have happened, but they've been hunted down. They went to space Argentina, all of that process.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's the trial, and yet there's one. And that the fact that maybe she is essentially self-made. That if she, she gets this child army, or she's able to take a small legion of troops with her or something.
I agree with you, and I still very much love that idea for Phasma.
Yeah.
I want her to be the one that slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
And because it's that one dark hope, it's that one evil hope
and it's
that keeps the Empire alive.
It's that snuffing out evil and defeating an enemy means defeating it 100% and not allowing anything to.
And it's going to keep popping up forever, kind of thing.
if
And
you
you
don't
have to
seal all the
continuously fight
gaps,
against it. And I think that Phasma needs to embody that. But I think the Gendai's role in this is not to indoctrinate her. She already believes all this.
Right.
He just gives her the tools. He's like, hey, I made this deal with Palpatine. Here's the information you need. Here's Exegol. Here's where it is. Go and find it. My job is done.
Right.
Like,
So
I'm just
rather
hooking
than
you up
having,
I'm just
like,
hooking you up with
Sentinel-
info, and that's it.
not
In
having
our
Sentinel droids, having someone else.
In our current treatments, and
Yeah.
this is open to change. We pivot very strongly as the First Order being pitched as what is being brought in to stop the crime syndicates.
Yeah, no, I've moved away from that.
Right.
How so?
In my head, I've got it as the First Order is like secret. No one knows about them. And they are specifically an Imperial remnant operating on the Outer Rim. And that's because I think that's just more simple.
Right.
I think what Hux is doing is he's arguing against the Jedi. The Jedi are evil and they're going to manipulate society. We've got to get rid of them. Leia is like, there's so much conflict going on in the Outer Rim. We need to focus on that, not political squabbles here in the core worlds. And that's the argument. And it's nothing to do with like safety and stuff like that.
Right.
And there's not this question of the First Order coming in to save everyone.
But is the crime syndicate still a risk to the New Republic? A threat, rather?
I guess so.
And then where does Finn come from?
I'm working on it. Yeah.
It sort of falls under like this like piggy bank thing that he was doing with Exegol, where all of a sudden there's just a bunch of Death Stars in Exegol, and it feels like the Gendai is just kind of just another way of doing that, where it's like, oh, Gendai has all of this. All of a sudden, the Gendai is just like, yeah, here you go. Here's all the Imperial stuff you need, and gives it to Phasma.
Again, it's information.
Yeah.
Phasma's still building the First Order and finding the ships and finding the troops, kidnapping children and indoctrinating them over the course of 10, 20 years, and building a small militia-sized army that kind of is a dark reflection of the rebellion from back in the day.
Right.
Because they're doing their guerrilla fighting, but they're doing it in secret because they don't want people to know that they're around.
Yeah.
Because they are Imperial loyalists. And they think the Empire was right, and they got to reinstate the Empire and bring the Emperor back from death.
Now, what's their plan? How do they do that?
They got to find Rey. That's the plan.
Find Rey.
Yeah, because she's the missing part. They've found Exegol already, and they don't want to use it until they have Rey.
But even then, when they have, if they bring back some sort of clone embodiment of the Emperor, then they don't have the resources.
Well, they don't need the resources if they've got a planet-killing machine.
I like I like the idea that we had. The First Order kind of hide in plain sight. Essentially, they can be this guns for hire group. They can defend planets, stuff like that, and that Hux and Phasma have some sort of deal. That's why he's championing for them. He doesn't know her true intentions, but here she is coming in with her military, being the saviors to the galaxy, and suddenly, the New Republic's army is evil, and she's got all this power again.
Yeah,
And
no,
it
I
doesn't
really
take
like
much
that
to
too.
manipulate from there.
I really like that too. I think that's a very strong idea. I'm not trying to like take away from that. I have just been like, I do this all the time. I'm just like, let's go back to square one.
Square one and tear it
Take
apart.
it all apart, tear it all apart. Do Sandro's least favorite thing. He's dying right now because he's trying to mentally reshuffle all of these ideas
Yeah.
and put them in order in a way that maybe works.
I think how it ends up getting reshuffled means that we now have like a big undisclosed power in the crime underworld and another huge power somewhere else. They're completely unrelated now after the Gendai gives the information to Phasma. And it makes for not much of a thing to cut back to for Leia's story, which is fine. We can make Leia's story shorter, but it does introduce like kind of like a problem where it's like, well, we might as well just can Hux as a character because there's not really much happening there. His overall compelling political message as well ceases to exist. So it kind of takes everything out of this one part of the story, the B part, C plot of the story.
I politely disagree. I don't think it like fully cans. I don't think it cans Hux's story or Leia's story. But I can see why you'd think that like, oh, we've like thrown out all this stuff. And it's definitely not the best thing to just hit you guys with like radical shifts on the
So this is
podcast.
something you're working on for that upcoming.
But this is something I've been working on in terms
episode
of
that
like,
we're
I
doing.
want to build interesting and believable lore and backstory for
Yeah.
Exegol and how the Death Star technology works and why they might be hunting Rey and how Rey ties into all of this in general. Yeah, that's where I've been working on recently. But I'm happy to move away from this because it's not the most productive conversation right now.
Well, currently what's sort of inspiring that huge radical shift is just the fact that you want Palpatine to make a deal with a Gendai. So like if we could just like cut that out for a second and imagine like a few other alternative ways maybe for Phasma to find out about that prophecy.
It's also got to be things that we can tell on screen.
you mentioned Sith Sentinels. I'm not imagining giving that on screen, but also up until now, had imagined that maybe they wouldn't have even found Exegol yet.
Oh, so they're still working on finding Exegol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they have this ultimate power, why have they not already used it?
Well, they were not in the place to use it. If they use this super weapon to kill a planet, it's like, okay, cool, you killed a planet, but you didn't get any resources from it. You didn't get more ships or more armies. So now you're just going to get bombarded by the New Republic.
Mm.
Then they're going to steamroll you.
So Phasma wants to manipulate, like, let's say Ben. You get Ben, use the weapon, that you still need a host body for Palpatine, right?
Yeah.
That's where Rey fits in. She's the host body.
Mm.
The Horcrux. Anyways, I think we've landed on an interesting place as well with Phasma. Obviously, this started as a Starkiller Base episode.
Yeah.
And it has wildly spun out of that realm, which is great.
My only other point to be made is Melo asked before, what happens when they use the weapon and they have Rey, and they get her back?
Rey becomes Palpatine.
And
she loses all
becomes
sense of self,
Yep.
and Palpatine's
And she
memories
becomes
and
Palpatine.
power return to her.
Yeah, and then you asked what happens after that, and you
You just
replied
keep
with,
using the Death Star then? Like this.
Well, yeah, now
Exegol?
he's back and he has the Death Star, yeah.
yeah, well, you've replied with, well, now he's back and he has the Death Star, but nothing really changes from, all they get is one-up Palpatine. Nothing really changes between
That's a really good point.
that and having the Death Star without a Palpatine.
And I think this is where the crime underworld does come into it.
Right.
Is because if they have this, power source, they're going to try and use that to take over the New Republic. And I think, there's a part of their plan involves taking over some of the crime underworld to get those ships and those fighters and stuff so they can have a war. Because I want there to be a war of some kind. I think the most interesting thing to me is having the crime underworld fighting against the New Republic. That's the war that I'm
If you have a
interested in.
super weapon planet, why bother with any other resources? Why not just kill everyone who's a thorn in your side?
No, because as Bryce
They can destroy
just said,
the super
they
weapon.
can just come to the super weapon and
So what if say you've got like your smaller first order, which can defend that? That's all you need. Bomb you, bomb you, bomb you, bomb. And how much charge? How does it charge?
Kyber crystals.
Kyber crystals. Okay,
Yeah.
so it just
But that's-
recharges. Does
that's
it have
why
a
I'm
recharge
not
time?
necessarily sure that they should have found the Exegol by the end of.
That's fair. And what I want to talk about most is what you pointed out, though, is how Phasma finds out about Exegol and Rey. I think that is the big question that comes. It's a symptom of what is Phasma's motivation? Where
Yeah.
does she come from? Who is she really, and what drives her?
No,
And
I
where
agree.
does she get this information?
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
I agree with you. It doesn't necessarily need to come from the Gendai. And I think exploring like alternatives. So there's the Sentinels, which is the little robot Skype machines
well,
that Palpatine has.
Yeah. Well, step one, very simple terms, is just having her have been someone in the Empire.
Yeah, she's just from the Empire. She's
Yeah.
that old.
Yeah. And just being that incredibly loyal to it.
Yeah.
But then, yes, can get more information from, a droid sentinel of Palpatine.
Yeah, we just need to figure out what piece gives her the extra information for her to then continue on.
The reason I
Like a
liked
first
that it was
order.
the Gendai is because we've talked about this idea that she is the one that slipped through the cracks. And I think to have it be convincing that she slipped through the cracks, you need to have the information be kept in some kind of receptacle that is extraordinary.
Right.
And having it be this Gendai mastermind of the criminal underworld. It made sense to me of like something that is that incredible and that believable in a way. Because otherwise all the other Imperial officers would have done it if they knew about that information.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So,
Right.
like, the information chain, though, has to be very specific. So, was she of a certain rank then? Maybe. Was she a Moff?
Palpatine making a deal for the Empire post his death seems just a bit strange to me.
Like he
Like-
wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't do that, and also like the Gendai holding up on that deal also seems a little strange to me. You're in the Gendai's position. You're currently a big mob boss within the crime underworld.
Yeah.
And you're helping feed into a power that might eventually rival yours.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
You had a good thing going for the Empire.
That's it.
You had
That's my point.
You had a good
Yeah.
deal going for the Empire. The Empire fell.
Better
you
deal.
got more power.
You've got a better deal now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Why would you help the Empire come back?
In my mind, the Gendai was like, I love the status quo. The
Mm.
status quo is perfect for me. I don't want it to change. The rebels take over. He hates it. He
Yeah,
wants to go back to the status quo and have the Empire back. That was where my head was at. I don't know if that's the most compelling or satisfying answer to your question. Maybe we can do better.
Right. So there's cool dialogue there of like people that sympathize with the wrong side, not because they agree with their ethics, but because they're comfortable with how the situation sits. There's a very interesting like real world parallel there.
I still think the thing that makes most sense, though, is that without the Empire, the underworld has more power.
And they would
They
take,
don't.
they would
yeah.
take, they would
They
fill
don't-
that vacuum.
They don't hate the new status quo established by the rebels. They would be able to thrive. The rebels can't keep up with them. They can't keep them in check.
That's a good point.
But I think we've made a lot of progress in terms of the lore around Exegol, the lore around Rey's sort of bigger picture in this, whether it be a prophecy misread or whether it actually does return to Palpatine. An end goal for a villain a lot of really compelling points that I think really, really do, I think how you said it before, Mello, just like soundly fit into the lore and into the canon and do sort of fit within that poetry that
I
we're
love
always
that I
talking
started
about.
there where it's like, here's all these things we've talked about and it works. And I'm like, I'm just going to push it as far as I can.
Yeah. And then you've just like pushed it over the line.
Yeah.
You're just like edging us and we're like, oh, well, I'm not sure.
Maybe stop there.
I will say, because we do need to go over a certain amount of time. So we've got time right now.
Yeah, you've got time.
Okay. Maybe not a new pitch, but just reiterating some sort of directions we'd been heading previously. Prequel trilogy is one big side versus one big side in one big war. And
Manipulated by one guy.
Yeah, original trilogy, big empire, little group of rebels fighting big bad guy. Kind of the way that I'd been heading, maybe we had all been heading with it, was that we were shaping up this trilogy to have the galaxy be at war between the New Republic and the crime underworld.
Yes.
Again, two big sides, but where we're actually focusing with our heroes, or I was trying to get us to a point where the Jedi have basically become outlawed. So the New Republic don't like them. Obviously, the crime underworld don't like them. And that's where we find our heroes is within the Jedi. And they know that this war doesn't need to exist. It could lead to just more death and destruction. It's a manufactured war. And our heroes' responsibility is, on the outsides of both societies, having to try and stop this war.
I like
where
that.
I'm at, you know?
So
our heroes, they're not rebels. They're outlaws, essentially.
definitely where the part where it's like the crime underworld versus the New Republic.
Yeah.
I definitely like that. But I think figuring out who is manipulating it and who is driving it is still somewhere I'm foggy on, and I have different ideas to what you've just put there. So that is something we're going to work on in the future for sure. But I think, outlining the prophecy and Exegol and that kind of thing, I think we're pretty much aligned on that. It's figuring out the specifics of character drives and motivation, who knows what and why, that kind of stuff.
Because I'm not sure, especially when like breaking it down a bit closer into the first film, how much the criminal underworld takes a play.
So that is a very good segue into the episode we're going to be recording tomorrow that will release next week. So if you're listening on the Friday, this will be next Friday's episode. It's going to be our Crime Underworld episode. So we're going to be talking heaps about that, filling out more of this context and trying to get more on the same page in terms of what are the underpinning factions. How are they moving and why? And what's going on beneath the surface a bit, which is the tricky stuff, but it's fun. I have a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun listening to my wacky nonsense this week.
Yeah. Crime Underworld's going to be important, and I think
for sure
we might find how the First Order works into that come up again.
Yeah, and now that I've hit you guys with some of my crazy ideas, we can talk about that off camera, and you can beat me into shape about it.
Yeah, but that's it.
That's time for this week. That's our episode on Starkiller Base, sort of. Psych you with that thumbnail and the title. But I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. This has been Fixing the Sequel Trilogy. Every week we come here and we talk about Star Wars. You can find us on all of the good stuff, social media-wise. Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, a couple other places. TikTok, we're on TikTok now. Go and check us out. Give us 5 stars, like and subscribe. Check out all of our shows.
Leave some comments.
Leave some comments. We love comments. But until next time, may the Force be with you.